All right, testing one, two, three. Testing one, two, three. All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I'm gonna start off this lesson by giving all praises and honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rafat HaKadosh, and the bond of the apostles, bishops, and elders who give most strong rule well. All right, and I've taught me this word in truth and sincerity, peace and mercy to the elect, starting with 144,000. It's also pushing this word in truth and sincerity across the four corners of the earth, as well as the rest of the elect, peace and mercy to you and your household. All right, my fellow servant of Moth of GMS Toronto coming at you once again with another lab lesson. And this is going to be a part two, all right, to the part one of 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Avoid Israel's mistakes. Okay. And really, I'm actually going to change the title to Lessons from Israel's Idolatry. That's really what this chapter is going into. And it's always, as scripture saying, that what was written before time was written for our learning, right? The elect. Okay. Bear with me here. Okay. So I left off halfway through the chapter in part one, so we'll just get right into it. Okay. I think I left off at 17. Okay, I'm gonna read yeah, I finished off 17, so let's go 18. So 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 18, and it reads, Behold, Israel after the flesh are not they which eat of the sacrifices partakers of the altar, right? NLT, it says, think about the people of Israel. Weren't they united by eating the sacrifices at the altar? Right? It says, what say I then? The idol is anything, or that which is offered in sacrifice to idols is anything. But I say, verse 20, I'm going to go back and read in the NLT. I'll just finish it up in King James. Or you know what? Matter of fact, just go into NLT. It says here, think about verse 18. Think about the people of Israel. Weren't they united by eating the sacrifices at the altar? What am I trying to say? What am I trying to say? Am I saying that food offered to idols has some significance, or that idols are real gods? No, not at all. I'm saying that these sacrifices are offered to demons, not to Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai. And I don't want you to participate with demons, okay? Hence, going into the title of the lesson, right? Learning, all right, from the idolatry of our foreparents, which is no different today, right? If anything, it's 100 times worse, all right? Because basically, if you don't have this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, right, of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, you are immersed, okay, and initiated into idol worshiping, pagan worships, okay, without whether you're aware of it or not. Okay, you are initiated in that because there's a clear dividance. See, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. We know this. Job 9:24. Okay, so without this truth, knowledge, or this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, all right, you are immersed in worshiping idols through your clothes, through your clothing, to your food, through the vehicles you drive, all right, the sports you play, Even while the World Cup is going on right now, that's a huge sacrifice and veneration and worship, all right, to the gods of the heathens, which are no gods, okay, demons. Just like Paul says, okay, in the King James, verse 20 says, "But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils, and not to Yahweh. And I would not that ye should have fellowship with devils." Okay, so let's get or let me read the next two precepts, and I'll get another precept. Let me get something in chat, and then we'll get a precept. Verse 21, it says in the NLT, "You cannot drink from the cup of the Lord Yahweh Bashem El Shai and from the cup of demons. 2, you cannot eat at the Lord's table and at the table of demons too." Okay, and that's pretty straightforward, man. You can only have one master that you serve. You can't serve two masters. Either you'll love one and hate the other, okay, or hate one and love the other. Same thing, vice versa. It says, do we what do we dare to rouse the Lord's jealousy? Do you think we are stronger than the Lord than He is? Okay, so I know that when going into the history of the Church of Corinth, man, they gave Paul a lot of trouble. Okay, because just like you have today, you had believers dabbling, all right, in these uh, uh, worship feast, okay, of the heathens, while still being, believers of Yahweh Shai. And it's no different today. You have Israelites, all right, that claim to know the truth and claim to believe the truth, but they're dabbling into, other gods. All right. Case in point, IUIC, Israel United in Confusion. Okay. That's all Christ is, right? Jesus Christ is confusion. Yahweh Shah HaMashiach is the truth, the way and the light. Okay. So you're calling yourself an Israelite, serving the Most High, but you're calling upon Jesus Christ, not Yahweh Shai. That's one form of that. Okay. And there's multiple ways that Israel is dabbling, basically, dabbling in the worship of demons, devils, while calling themselves believers of Yahweh Bashem El Shai. And the Most High is going to bring serious judgment upon those Israelites for doing so. Because basically, you're making the Most High and His Son a mockery. And the Most High and His Son are not to be mocked. Okay? So let's go from here into chat real quick. Okay. So I can bear with me here. Okay, I'm gonna start from let's go partakers of the altar, okay? Right here. So it says partakers of the altar. The word partakers is closely related to the same idea as communion in verse 16, sharing or participating. It says, Paul's point is when Israel ate from sacrifices offered to God, they were participating in worship centered on Yahweh's altar. When believers partake of the bread and cup, okay, and remember the truth, right? Knowledge and wisdom is likened to food, okay? It's likened to bread and wine. So you have the bread and wine of demons, and you have the bread and wine of Yahweh Bashem El Shai, okay? So it says when believers partake of the bread and cup, they are participating in Yahweh Shai. Therefore, someone cannot consistently participate in idol feast without entering into fellowship with what those feasts represent. Okay, and this is what the majority of Israel All right, the majority of Israelites today don't understand. All right, you tell them this, and they would, and they're ready to rebuke you. Okay, about what you're telling them, about you telling them that you can only serve one Lord. You can't do what you want coming to serve the Lord, man. All right, and the grace period, it's almost up. It's almost done. All right, the Lord is getting ready to take his prophets off the highways and the byways. Okay, via this devil's legislations and its laws that he's getting ready to pass, especially here in Canada. So it says the flow of Paul's argument. Paul Paul builds a threefold comparison. Number one, Yahushai's table, right? Bread and cup equals fellowship with Yahushai. Number two, Israel's altar. Sacrificial meals equal fellowship with Yahweh's altar, with Yahweh Bashim Shai's altar. Number three, pagan altars. Idol sacrifices equal fellowship with demons behind idol worship. Okay. His conclusion is that acts of worship are never spiritually neutral. That's right. Acts of worship are never spiritually neutral. That's why I said earlier, if you don't have, all right, the true knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of the words of Yahweh Bashim Shai, you are automatically spiritually caught up in worshiping Satan, the devil, because again, pursuant to Job 9:24, it's the earth, or it's the wicked. All right, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. So the only way you can get out of the grips, all right, and the mental strongholds, the scriptures talk about the breaking strongholds of the devil, all right, via his physical counterpart Esau Edom. Okay, is through this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, man. The true knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of the Most High's words in the Bible. Okay, as Yahweh said, the truth shall set you free from what? The wiles of the devil, man. These strongholds. So it says Passover connection. Although verse 18 is not specifically about the Passover, it supports the same principles. At the Passover, Israel ate the sacrificial lamb as a part of the covenant meal. Exodus 12. Likewise, many other sacrifices included sacred meals that express fellowship with Yahweh. Paul uses the entire sacrificial system to reinforce the point that he introduced with the bread and cup in verse 16 and 17. And then he gives us key precepts. Okay. And now skipping down concerning verse 22. Okay, I read to Slake. Just want to make sure I have everything here. Right. Okay, so let's go to Baruch concerning what I read here in verse 18 to 22. This is Baruch chapter 4, verse 1. Okay. In the King James, it says, "This is the book of the commandments of Yahweh, Bashim El Shai, and the law that endureth forever. All they that keep it shall come to life." But see, the instructions of Yahweh Bashim El Shai are what lead to immortality. Okay, and the elect have found it. Right. While Esau Edom is looking for it, he's looking for his birthright back. At the same time, he's looking for a way to tap into immortality and live forever. But that's only reserved for the elect of the nation of Israel. Why? Because those are the ones that will, all right, and according to prophecy, have stood stiffly, okay, for the names of Yahweh, Yahweh Shai, which includes his law, statutes, and commandments, his instructions. Okay. So it says, "This is the book of the commandments of Yahweh and the law that endureth forever. All they that keep it shall come to life, but such as leave it shall die. Turn thee, O Jacob, and take heed of it. Walk in the presence of the light thereof." Okay? So this is what truly illuminates your mind. It illuminates you. All right, it's walking in the presence, or walking in this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Okay, with truth and sincerity, in truth and sincerity, that thou mayest be illuminated. Give not thine honor to another, nor the things that are profitable unto thee to a strange nation. Okay, and that's what our people have done. And they did it in the past, and they're doing it even more so, and again now, by including these heathens, okay, in the salvation of the Israelites, starting with the elect. That's what you're doing. You're giving thy honor unto another. Okay, it says, give not thine honor unto another, nor the things that are profitable unto thee to a strange nation. Okay, and Israel did that by what? By venerating, partaking, all right, in the worships and the different sacrificial meals of the gods of the heathens, like they do today. Okay, and what did the Lord do with Israel? He destroyed them. All right, he dusted off a lot of Israelites for doing that, right? But pursuing to Isaiah chapter 1, right? Verse 9, or I think verse 7, if the Lord didn't leave us a remnant, starting with Yahushua on down to the rest of the elect, all right, we would have been on to Sodom and as unto Gomorrah. And it's crazy because the majority of Israel they don't understand that we would have been through as a nation, completely through as a nation, if Yahushua, the Lord didn't send his son down, Yahushua, to do what he did 2,000 plus years ago. And you got Israelites that will fix their mouth to tell you that Yahushua is not to be worshipped. No understanding of what's really going on, or no understand, as well as no understanding of the scriptures whatsoever, and the importance of Yahushua. And that's what's going to get a lot of Israelites killed, man. A lot of Israelites are going to die in Jacob's trouble. Okay. O Israel, happy are we, for the things that are pleasing unto Yahweh, Bashim Shai, are made known unto us. Okay. And in this time, this is the Israel of the Most High, which is the elect. Okay. Um, be of good cheer, my people, the memorial of Israel. You see, that's how you know. That's code for the elect. Okay. Zion, the monument, memorial of Israel. It's a remnant. Ye were sold to the nations, not for your destruction, but because you moved Yahweh, all right, to wrath. Ye were delivered unto the enemies, for ye provoked him that made you by sacrificing unto devils and not unto Yahweh. Ye have forgotten the everlasting power that brought you up, and ye have grieved Jerusalem that nourished you. Okay. Yeah, that's it on that. That's it on that. It's pretty straightforward. Let's go back and finish up here. 1 Corinthians 10 and 22. Or let me start at 21. It says, drink, ye cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. Ye cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and the table of devils. Do we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? Verse 23. All things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but all things edify not. Okay, NLT, it says, you say I am allowed to do anything, right? So this is basically the talking points of the believers of the Church of Corinth. Okay, they're behaving and moving and talking like they're allowed to do. They like to do it. They're allowed to do anything, right? So it says, but not everything is good for you, right? Even if it's lawful, right? And that's basically what Paul's getting into, right? Because it's always within the context of the law, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Bashim Shai. All right. So even if it's good for you, right? It says, but not everything is good for you, even if it's lawful. You say, I am allowed to do anything, but not everything is beneficial. Oh, verse 24. It says, let no man seek his own, but every man another's wealth. Okay? NLT says, don't be concerned for your own good, but for the good of others. Okay, as well, really. You got to be concerned you got to be concerned with your own well-being, but also be concerned, all right, with the well-being of other believers, the body. Okay, and Paul, I got this from chat to explain as to why Paul was saying this. Okay, and it still ties to us today, of course. So here, you know what? Before I get this in chat, let me get this precept here. This is Philippians chapter 2. All right, 3. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 says, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem uh, uh, let each esteem other let each esteem other better than themselves. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. You see? Let this mind be in you, which was also in Yahushua. And this is what the leaders of different Israelite camps today don't do. They don't care about how their actions and their words affect the congregation that's following them. Okay, now we know the majority of the people that follow them are zombies, anyways. They're set up to follow, all right, the blind, right? The blind lead the blind, they should both fall into the ditch, right? But that doesn't mean that the Lord's not going to hold them accountable, all right, for leading these people astray, leading these Israelites astray. Their blood will be upon their hands. This is why, all right, Paul, all right, how try through Paul is telling us what he's telling us here in Philippians and also in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Okay, verse 4. It says, look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Right? Let this mind be in you, which was also in Yahushua, Hamashiach. And Yahushua did that. Enough times, you won't think Yahushua felt like using his spiritual powers to just do away with 2/3 and the Roman rulership, in the Roman Empire? Of course he did. He was tested in all points like we are, right? But he stood to the will, right? He kept to the will of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh. And that's what you call prudence. Okay. Slaki. And continue on. It says, verse 5, let this mind be in you, which was also Yahushua, who being in the form of Yahweh, thought it not robbery to be equal with Yahweh. You see, this is exactly what I just said. Okay. And what that means, what does it mean that be in the form of Yahweh, which means when he came down, he wasn't the Most High himself. Okay, unlike these wacky-tacky Christians, these bugged-out Christians would like you to believe that the Most High and the Yahushua, the Son, all right, are one person. No, they're in one agreement, all right, but there are two separate entities. Okay, what this is talking about is that let me read it in NLT first. It says, though he was, oh, okay, never mind. It goes way off. It says, though he was God and he wasn't. Okay, so King James says, who being in the form of Yahweh. So you see that? In the form of the Most High. When he came down, he had spiritual power. Okay, and he was perfect. He wasn't in a perfect body, but he was perfect in the sense he didn't go off once, and he had spiritual power. Okay, he told I forgot who he told, but he had, Yahushua mentioned, or I think he told Pontius Pilate. Okay, I can calm down a legion of angels, which is like 7,000 angels, if I wanted to. Okay, so he definitely came in the form of a god. Okay, which is the one and only God, Yahweh. So who being in the form of Yahweh, though it thought it not robbery to be equal with Yahweh, right? That's why he said, why is thou callest me good? For there's only one that's good, and that's the Heavenly Father. Okay. But these other Israelite camps would make you would have you believe, all right, that they're on the same level as Yahushua. Like the Most High is dealing with them directly. The Most High is not dealing with no Israelite right now directly. The only Israelite the Most High is dealing with directly is Yahushua. And the Yahushua is only dealing with the elect. Okay? Verse 7, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. Okay? Verse 8, it says, and being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. That's right, which was his sacrifice. And the elect, all right, have this same mindset in them. Okay, this is why the scripture says that they love not their lives unto death. All right, so let's go from here to chat concerning verses 23 and 24. It says, yes, that is exactly the context. In 1 Corinthians 10 and 23, cannot be 10:23 to 24, cannot be separated from what Paul has been discussing from verse 14 to 22. Let's follow the train of thought. Verse 14 to 22, flee from idolatry. Idolatry. Verse 16, the bread and cup of fellowship. The bread and cup are fellowship with Yahweh. Verse 18, Israel's sacrifices were fellowship with Yahweh, with Yahweh's altar. All right. Really, it should say Israel's sacrifices were fellowship with Yahweh via the altar. Okay, so that's where we kept the sacrifices. We did the sacrifices on the altar. And now our bodies are given as a living sacrifice. And wherever the elect are is likened to a spiritual altar. Okay. Verse 20 to 21, it says the Gentiles, Israelite foreigners, sacrifice, and natural Gentiles sacrifice to demons, and you cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the Lord's table and the table of demons. Then comes verse 23 and 24. 23, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but all things edify not. The Corinthians were apparently using the slogan, all things are lawful for me, to justify their behavior. Okay? This is why, case in point, IUIC, even Genesis and Sakari, when they were a group, okay? What did they do? They justified wearing hats, bringing sticks to camp. Okay, you should know what I mean by sticks to camp. Okay, IUIC justifies themselves in what? Keeping lineups. Okay, keeping lineups. Telling a man that he can only deal with one woman, which is wicked. Okay, and many other things. Okay, showing that which is then is now. The same people back then are the same people coming back now. Okay, hence their behavior. So the Corinthians were apparently using the slogan, all things are lawful for me, to justify their behavior. Paul answers, even if something is technically permissible, right? Ask, does it benefit? Does it build up the faith of others? Yes. So it could be lawful, but is it beneficial and does it build up the faith of others? Okay. Like some of you brothers shouldn't be drinking around other brothers. You shouldn't be drinking, period. Okay. Because when you do, all right, the other side comes out. Okay. And so that's one example, one of many. He says, so he shifts the discussion from merely asking, can I do this, to should I do this? Yes. And that's because that's another thing. You can keep the law. Obviously, we can't keep all the laws, but you can keep a particular law and still offend in the spirit. That's why the shift of questioning is perfect from can I do this to should I do this, rather. Okay. But even if you can do it, should you do it? Right? All things are lawful, but not expedient. Verse 24. Let no man seek his own, but every man another's wealth. The word wealth here means the good, welfare, or benefit of another person. Paul is saying, don't live only for your own liberty. Think about how your actions affect your brothers and sisters, how this fits the idol issue. Some Corinthians believers knew that idols were nothing. See 1 Corinthians 8 and 4. Because of that knowledge, they thought they could attend meals held in pagan temples without any spiritual consequence. Paul agrees that an idol has no real existence. That's right, which we know that. But he says the worship behind idols is connected with demons. Okay? And that was verse 20. So, 1 Corinthians 10 and 20. So his concern isn't the carved image itself, it's the act of participating in pagan worship. Okay? He tells them, don't provoke Yahweh to jealousy. Don't use your freedom carelessly. Think about your brothers and sisters. Notice what Paul says next in verse, which we'll probably get into anyways. Yeah, we'll get into that anyways. So I'll leave that for now. Or you know what? Let me just read it. It says in 1 Corinthians 10 and 25 to 27, Paul says believers may eat may eat meat sold in the marketplace or served in someone's home without asking whether it had been offered to idols. But then in verse 28 and 29, if someone specifically says this was offered to sacrifice to idols, Paul says not to eat it, not because the meat itself is defiled, but because of what eating it communicates to others. Okay? That's the point. Buying meat that may have come from an idol sacrifice permitted. Okay? Buying meat that may have came from an idol sacrifice permitted, right? Because we go to heck, you go to the grocery store. The meat that you got in the grocery store, it's not even real meat. The fruits that you buy are not even real fruits. And why do you think that is? It's because uh, uh, all of that, all right, is in the hands of the wicked. And who do they serve? Satan, demons. Okay, so just by going to the grocery store, all right, you're partaking in meats that are offered onto demons, right? But there's a level of balance that we're to have, seeing that we're in Babylon the Great. Okay, that's what Paul was basically tackling. He was tackling that topic, okay, about having a balance. You can't be over righteous, all right, and you have to make sure that you offend less at the same time, right? So it says here, participating in an idol sacrificial feast as an act of worship, forbidden. That's right. So let's um let's continue, and then I'll get a little bit more, and that'll be it. So verse 25, 1 Corinthians 10 and 25, it says, whatsoever is sold in the shambles, right? Which modern day shambles would be like your meat markets, right? Of like Elam's meat markets, Ishmael's meat markets, so on and so forth, as well as these restaurants, right? So whatsoever is sold in the shambles, that eat, asking no question for conscience sake. Yeah, you just pray over it, right? For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Okay. If any of them that believe not bid you to a feast, and ye be disposed to go, whatsoever is set before you, eat, asking no question for conscience sake. Let's read this in NLT. It says in verse 25, so you may eat anything that is sold in the marketplaces within the context of it being lawful. Okay, right? And a dietary law. Of course, you're not going to eat pork. That'd just be retarded. Okay. So but you might be given obviously, meat that is pork, and then you realize, and then so you might have already taken a bite of it or whatnot. Obviously, you pray for forgiveness, but you do away with that meat, right? But anyways, it says, so you may eat meat. You may eat any meat that is sold in the marketplace without raising questions of conscience, right? Whether you're doing good or bad, as long as it's lawful. For the earth is the Lord's, Yahweh's, and everything in it. If someone who isn't a believer asks you home for dinner, right? And this would be most likely an Israelite who doesn't believe in Yahweh Shai, right? But they know that they're Israelites. So they're not believers of Yahweh Shai. If someone who isn't a believer asks you home for dinner, accept the invitation if you want to. Eat whatever is offered, right? As long as it's lawful according to the dietary law, to you without raising questions of conscience. But suppose someone tells you this meat was offered to an idol, don't eat it out of consideration for the conscience of the one who told you. It might not be a matter of conscience for you, but it is for the other person. Yeah, you got to be mindful. All right, that's a great responsibility that comes with serving Yahweh Bashkim Shai. All right, and the responsibility comes from being aware of how the world, and starting with the Israelites, right, the world of Israel views us. Okay, because we want to be found without spot or blemish, covered under the blood of Yahweh Shai. So so if we believe that we're of the elect, covered under the blood of Yahweh Shai, there is a way and there is a conduct of the highest order that's that we are responsible of conducting. Okay, conducting ourselves in that manner. Okay, that's what Paul's laying down. So it says, "For why should my freedom be limited by what someone else thinks? If I can thank Yahweh for the food and enjoy it, why should I be condemned for eating it? So whether you eat or drink, or whether you do it all for the glory of Yahweh, don't give offense." Slacking. So whether you eat or drink, or whether you do, or whatever you do it all for the glory of Yahweh. Don't give offense to Jews or Gentiles, okay, so Israelite foreigners, or the church of Yahweh. I too try to please everyone in everything I do. I don't just do what is best for me. I do what is best for others so that many may be saved, right? In the ministry, and you be not blamed as well. Okay, so let's close it off here in chat. We got this last little bit from verse 27 to 30. So verse 27 and 30 says, from verse 27 to verse 30 are often misunderstood if they're read apart from the rest of the chapter. Paul is not reversing what he said in verse 14 to 22. He's distinguishing between ordinary eating and participating in idol worship. Let's go verse by verse. 1 Corinthians 10 and 27. If any of them that believe not bid you to a feast, and ye be disposed to go, whatsoever is set before you, eat, asking no questions for conscience sake. Here Paul is talking about an unbeliever inviting a Christian, right? So an Israelite foreigner, right? He might consider himself a Greek, okay, or a Roman, or he might know he's an Israelite, right? But just doesn't believe in Yahweh Shai. Okay, these are the contexts of a believer, okay, or an actual heathen. Okay, here Paul is talking about an unbeliever inviting a Christian to a meal, likely in a private home. His instructions is simple: if you choose to go, eat what is served, it says, don't integrate the host, integrate, Slake. Don't integrate the host about where every piece of meat came from. The food itself is not the issue, right? Of course, considering that it's lawful. This connects to Psalms 24:1. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And that's what he was quoting, right? And First Timothy 4:4. Every creature of Yahweh is good if received with thanksgiving. It says, 1 Corinthians 10:28. But if any man say to you, this is offered in sacrifice unto idols, eat not for his sake, that showed it, and for conscience sake. Now the situation changes. Someone at the meal says this meal was offered to an idol. Paul says don't eat it. Why? Not because the meat has become spiritually unclean, rather because eating it in that context could communicate that you approve or participate in idol worship, because you never know what an unbeliever is thinking. Okay. And even within believers, even within the body of believers, you have brothers who have weaker consciences. So you got to be careful as an older brother, okay, or an elder, okay, of what you say, how you say, and what you do, and how you do it. Okay, thinking about that other brother's conscience. Okay, so let me read that again. Rather, because eating it in that context could communicate that you approve or participate in idol worship. It could also damage another person's conscience, right? 1 Corinthians 10:29. Conscience, I say, not thine own, but of others. Paul clarifies that he's not talking about your own conscience. Your conscience may be clear because you know idols are nothing. He's talking about the other person's conscience. Perhaps an unbeliever is watching to see whether Christians accept idol worship, you see? Or a weaker believer is present and may think idol worship is acceptable. Exactly. Right? You never know what other brothers are thinking around you. So you have to conduct yourself in a way that isn't just lawful, but also spiritually edifying. Okay, you can offend in the spirit. Okay, your actions teach others. Exactly. So if you're a leader or older brother or an elder in a camp, you got to make sure you're on top of, all right, the instructions and the orders that are passed down from apostle to heart on down, like lessons. Okay, because if you give room to yourself to slack off on meeting the standard, that ultimately acts as a cancer and leaven, and it gives room to other believers, all right, who have weaker consciences to do the same. And we don't want to be, all right, caught in judgment for doing that by Yahweh Shem Shai, man. Okay. So it says that's just one example, one of many. It says your actions teach others. Exactly. This echoes Romans 14:13 and 1 Corinthians 8:9. You guys can read that for yourselves. And it says here, 1 Corinthians 10:30, for if by grace be a partaker, why am I evil spoken of, that for which I give thanks? Paul is anticipating an objection. Someone might say, if I thank Yahweh for the food, why should anyone criticize me? Right. Paul answers, Paul answered, Paul's answer is essentially because your liberty is not just the highest priority. Yahweh Bashimashai's glory and other people's spiritual welfare are. You see? So again, because your liberty, right? Your freedom to do right. Okay, not whatever you want, your freedom to do right. which what you want to do in the spirit should be the right thing anyways. So because your liberty is not the highest priority, Yahweh Bashim Al Shai's glory and other people's spiritual welfare are. He concludes that the whole discussion, he concludes the whole discussion in the next verse, verse 31. Whether therefore ye eat or drink, or whatsoever ye do, do all to the glory of Yahweh, Bashim El Shai. Right? Then he adds in verse 32 and 33, give no offense to Jews, Gentiles, or the church of Yahweh, seeking, so Israelites, right, that don't follow Yahweh Shai, and Israelite foreigners, and the believers, right, of Yahweh Shai. Seeking the profit of many so that they may be saved. Give no offense to Jews, Gentiles, or the church of Yahweh, Bashim El Shai, seeking the profit of many so that they may be saved. Exactly. The overall principle, Paul presents three different situations: eating at the Lord's table, fellowship with Yahweh Shai; eating at an idol's sacrificial feast, fellowship with demons, don't do this; eating ordinary food in someone's home, permissible unless the meal is explicitly presented as an idol sacrifice in a way that would compromise your witness or another person's conscience. So Paul is not permitting attendance at an idol worship. He has already forbidden that in verse 20 to 21. Instead, he's addressing what to do in ordinary social settings where meat may have previously been offered to idols. Okay, which is the situation that we're in today, as our forefathers were in that time in the ancient world, and even much more now. The meat itself is not defiling. The concern is what your participation communicates, and whether it honors Yahweh Bashim El Shai and protects the conscience of others. Okay, so it says that is why the chapter begins with Israel's failure in the wilderness and ends with this principle: give no offense, even as I please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved. Okay, so that's it. All right. I pray, Lord willing, this was straightforward and edifying to the elect of the nation of Israel. I'm going to close by giving all praises and honor and glory to Yahweh, Abba Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Abba Hashem, HaKadash. Double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders, the great most home rule well, and of taught me this word in truth and sincerity. Okay, and peace and mercy to the elect, starting with 144,000. Okay, that's pushing this word in truth and sincerity across the four corners of the earth, and the rest of the elect as well. Peace and mercy to your household. Abba Ball, Kwama Sha'ala, and Shalom to the elect.